My name is Rodney Dow, and I grew up in the pre-Varroa mite era, and I actually started beekeeping, believe it or not, in 1960. I'm 71 years old, be 72 in June. And bees have been a whole part of my life, all except for 3 years when I was in the military. I had bees consistently. And when I moved up here to the Hudson Valley almost 26 years ago, my bees always came with me. And I've been keeping bees up here. I was on the board of Glenwood, which is a nonprofit over in Cold Spring, and I live in Garrison. And I had an apiary up there, and this year I'm finally moving it out and kind of dialing it back a little bit and having less hives, because I don't ever sell any of my honey or any of my bee products that I make. I gift all my stuff. So, but it's part of my life. It's part of my health. I think it's one of the reasons why I stay in great shape. I work at it myself, but I consume bee products. Say, knock on wood, I don't get sick. And that's the truth. The only last time I got sick, about 15 years ago, I picked up Giardia, drinking water out in the wilds, in the woods. So other than that, I stay healthy with it, and I make my own healing tinctures. I was gifted the fact that I got started back in 1960, 61, that period, by a Lithuanian who came from Lithuania. He was a commercial beekeeper. It was prior to the Second World War, when the Russians came, took his hives away except for 3, and he fought for the Russians, got captured by the Germans, worked with them because he could speak 3 languages, escaped to the United States. He and 5 guys escaped out of a prisoner compound by the Germans, went over the Swiss Alps and surrendered to the Americans. Came here to America, he landed in New York, and he started working for Aspen Tree Company because he was a forester, and he kept bees. And I was looking for a surrogate grandfather when my mother took me to the 4-H, the Suffolk County Beekeepers Association in Smithtown, Long Island, and looking for somebody to help me learn about bees. And this gentleman raised his hand, and I learned a whole lot about bees. And some things we were doing back then that have just caught on in the last 15, 20 years here in beekeeping. So I have the experience, and can you imagine raising bees that every bee that hatches out of those cells doesn't have a single Varroa mite on it? And there's a lot of open land. We haven't overdeveloped it. There was a mix of flora, so we had a good balance of pollen, because not all pollen is created equal, and it enabled these bees to thrive like you would not believe. You could, before I knew it, I had 16 hives, because there are swarms all over the place. People calling you up. I just put my name on the town hall list. When people say I got a swarm of bees, I'd run over there and grab them, and I just started building hives. There was no end to it until I finally was starting to run out of money. My first hive of bees cost me $7.50, and it was a package hive of bees I got from Sears and Roebuck, where I bought all my equipment. They had a farm catalog. So I give you that little bit of background to understand what I've gone through. I've learned a lot of things about bees. I love bees. They're a whole part of my life. And I want to end it with one thing. As beekeepers, we all need to agree that we'll disagree, because we all have our very strong opinions, and we know that our way is only the right way, but please accept that if I feel strong about some of my opinions. But everybody has their own opinions. One thing I have to tell you, like Tom does, I have experimented and tried new things since I've been keeping bees. So I've been keeping bees well over 50 years. I constantly are trying new things to improve my beekeeping. And now with the Varroa mites, we have to do everything we can possibly do. So I had put this slide show together. It's called, where's the little button?
I hope you didn't lose it on me, Rob.
Oh, jeez. Oh, here it is. Thank you. Thanks, Rob. Rob was kind enough to download it for me and put it on his computer.
I'm good at losing it on my own. I don't need your help.
Oh, yeah? Oh, okay. So here's the name of the game. It's important. We get our bees, but when winter comes, we want to have the largest clusters we can possibly have. Clusters are really important. If you go through a hive, if you start at the beginning of the fall going into the winter with a nice, healthy clusters, your chance of survival is huge. So I do everything all my behavior in keeping bees is I think about, will this improve the thriving of that hive? And I'm really looking forward to hearing about the probiotics, because I have to tell you, I've been messing with them, and it's like, you got me in. But I'm glad you're going to be talking about that. And that's one of the new things that comes along. They give it a try. So this is my apiary. Getting your nukes or packaged bees off to a good start. Obviously, I'm not a big proponent of packaged bees, but I love nukes. And so we'll take both of them. I have a quick technique. If some people working here with packaged bees, I will show you something I just messed around with. This is by experimenting. That is, to me, the best techniques for putting nukes inside a hive. It's getting them started. Okay, I'm a proponent of screen bottom boards. All my hives have screen bottom boards. That's not saying you should do it, but for me, I love it. I learned about this. I taught as a college professor from 1971, after I got out of the service, to 79 at SUNY Farmingdale on Long Island. I grew up on Long Island. My families go back to some of the first English settlers on Long Island. We were farmers and fishermen and seamen on Long Island, and I grew up in Smithtown. I had a fellow from when I was teaching bees, I had a huge apiary at Farmingdale. And I will tell you, I'll show you how good beekeeping was pre-Varroa. Out of 6 hives, I was 1,800 pounds of honey out of 6 hives. Figure that one out. But we had great pasturing land, lots of open space, huge orchards. We had it all. And there was still a lot of open land space at the time back in the 70s. Still some there. And what he came up, he was looking at my hives and he said, "Don't you use slatted boards?" And I said, "Slatted boards? What do you mean?" He says, "Oh, and you can see them, they sell them. Wooden slatted boards on the bottom for ventilation." And I'm a proponent of that, and that's all I use these hives. So anyway, and we'll move right along. Next thing is setting up the first brood chamber. Most importantly, a good home has a what? A good foundation. Without a good foundation, you don't have a great home. And here I used to use all wax foundations. And with wire supports, only one problem with that: those wire lines, the wire comes down, has memory to them, and it makes those frames bend. And that makes for a lousy frame, because some sides they get pushed out, they're not going to put any brood in, and then some are too deep and the queen can't lay eggs in them. So all good homes have strong foundations, and this is how I store them to keep the wax moths out of them. And these are, I put these spacers that you use for your hive, I strung them on a ceiling, and I keep my frames. And I get very little wax moth problem. And again, frames, don't forget the glue. When you're putting frames together, glue is on everything, and you make them strong. The next thing I do is I string them with wire. And in these, let me back. Here we go. Right here, these 2 holes. Then I put my wax foundations in, and then you attach them to the wire, and this is what a really good frame will be like. Why? Because it's nice and straight. The worker bees build them out, and they're even on both sides, and they take out that memory of that wire, which makes them curve. And it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to do it. And I experimented, and this past year, I took and went and bought a whole bunch of these frames for Man Lake, and I don't work for Man Lake. These are these plastic, and I buy the wax-coated frames, and I did a big experiment because I stuck a bunch of these on the hives, and it was a big expense I did for it to see how well they work. I can only tell you they work phenomenal, and I'm not a proponent of plastic foundations with wax covering. What's nice about it, it's rigid. The bees actually took to it, I would say, pretty close to as good as this hive. If you have a strong hive, they jump all over it. But even these hives, I love the wax foundation. I use these. And nice thing is you get all the spaces filled out. They pull out. There's no warping. And I love the look of the patterns in the hives. But that's just something I've learned, and we continue to do it. There's only 2 types of feeders. One for the beginning. I'm not a proponent of top hide feeders, except on my demonstration I'm going to show you top hide using the tin paint cans. The only time I use feeders is in the springtime when I have new bees, whether it's a packaged bees or a nuke. I always like to help them out, because when I get a packaged nuke, I'm expecting to see that filled with bees ready to almost swarm. I put them in, and I start to push them by putting in brand new frames to have them build out on. And so I always think they need a little help. There's still a lot of nectar out there. When they stop taking down the nectar, there's enough nectar out there and they stop taking down the sugar water, you're okay. But it gives them a little start to put some, to stimulate the flow of the wax, wax made by the bees. These are the front feeders I use. There's only one type. They come from Brushy Mountain. They're made out of cypress. They don't warp. They don't bend. The plastic ones, throw them out. Don't buy them because they're inexpensive. Because what happens, they get it out there in the sun, they start tilting like that, and then you break the vacuum on your jars, and they start leaking out. And one of the jars that I use for this, they were here someplace. All right, I use the 5-pound. I love them. I love I buy the 5-pound honey jars. They work great, and you put a lot of sugar water in, and I place them on the front of the hive. And that's the only time that I use them in the beginning to help them, because everything I'm trying to do is get them to thrive, help them out. Let's get them going. And this is the package bees. Here's a technique. I'll run it by real fast, but I don't buy packaged bees, but I use them as a demonstration here. All right, there's the queen. As we know, what I do is I go in the end where the sugar is, and I take a fine screw and I just open up the hole. I take it out of the box, out of the hive, the packaged hive of bees. I take out the queen, and I take where the sugar water is. I drill a little tiny hole there so the flow of the pheromones comes right. It brings them right to that hole. They can start working on it. Because the bees, this technique, they accept the queen really fast. I've done 42 hives of it, doing it this way. I have never lost a single queen. So I feel it works. So that's me. See how careful I'm going? Ooh, careful, because you don't want to slide through and kill your queen. All right, so here's what I do. I take the can of high fructose corn syrup, throw that away. And what I do is inside the hive, all right, so there's the queen package. What I do is, see the queen? I set the queen package right down there at the entrance where the bees will come out. You take off that top. So what I do, the first thing I do is I pry off the wooden top. I take my queen cage out. I get her all set up. I set her on the. As you can see, I'm setting her right here on the third frame, right next to where the hive. I kind of check it out. That's good. Then I go back out, pull up that cam, throw that away, and I take the bees, turn them over, and I set them. Oh, here we go. I'll get these controls right eventually here. No. Oh, I'm going backwards. I'm sorry. All right, and I use this is a large empty super. I set that on the side. What happens, all the bees have to come across that queen coming out of here. Do you think they're going to get her smell? Easy. Think they're going to get accepted real easy? Yep. All they do is I do this, and then I put the inner cover on and put the cover back on. Leave it for 5 days. I go in there and look. I haven't seen one in there yet. And especially when you drill out that little hole of sugar, it directs them right to it, because the odors or pheromones are coming right flowing out of that little hole. And she's been accepted. You go in there, and you look, yep, and then you take it out and get started with your bees. That's the best way to go. Put them back together. And here and then ventilation. So check to see if the queen is out. She's out, and put the cover on, and you're ready to go. And then I just, down here on the bottom, I'll be giving a little sugar water, help them get a little boost and get them started. And then ventilation. One thing that I learned back in the 1960s was I'll get this down right. Just a second. Oh, this way it goes. All right. I take half medium supers or small supers, and on the top, I just place it on top and put the cover on. I just happen to have a large super here when I did it, but normally I just use an extra empty super. What it is, it acts like your house. Hot air rises up, it goes into the ceiling, into the attic, and you have a vent fan going out. And obviously, your vent fan is the little openings here you have on your inner cover. By the way, we were doing this back in 1960. I didn't see this come online to about 15, 16 years ago, where they actually had the entrance of these inner covers cut out. We did it with a woodard and rasp and made a kind of a round hole. So then I put the cover on and it had ventilation. And when you have ventilation, the bees are not going to be spending a lot of time cooling down the hives. Again, more honey comes into the hive. There's not a lot of bees trying to keep it cool with the ventilation. I'm not saying you have to do it, but I have them on all my hives. And then there I put on the feeders in the front, and they're good to go. And I just hum away, and then every now and then, every week, check on them. Next step is mites. This is my little deal. I use oxalic acid, keep the mite population down. You know what? I don't want to answer any questions because I'm on a real tight schedule, but on the end, I'm here to answer anybody's questions. So just hold them if you can hold your thoughts. I find it really well. I stack up a few bricks. I put a little 2 grams of oxalic acid, turn on the thing. I made that little vaporizer. I bought that many years ago before you couldn't get in this country. I bought it in Sweden. And at that time it was like $250, $60, something like that. It was expensive, and I'm still using it. Inexpensive, boom, and I keep the mite I'm always working on keeping the mite population down. And once it's placed, I flip on the switch and it goes. Pushing the hive to thrive. This is about adding frames. I'll talk to you about it later. I don't want to go into too much detail, but how you keep adding your frames on. I'm always pushing them. I take out old frames, as Tom mentioned before, about good frames. I see a frame that looks crummy. I don't stick it. I get rid of it. I try to always cycling out frames that don't really look good or getting warped or have too much drone population on it. I do like the drones on the bottom because it's a great way to check your mites. Just on the hive and along the edge of the bottom of the hive, and then look for mites in your drones, and you can kind of get a guess. If you go down to 30 or 40 of them and you don't see any drones, you're in good shape. I mean, Varroa mites laying on those drones. And it's just a pattern that I use. Winter's coming, preparing your bees for the cold. Problem with everybody has a bad habit of starting too late, trying to get your bees up to speed when you want to check on them. So at the end of the year, I start in August, last week of August, first part of September. I feed all my hives in my ape area, whether they need it or not. Why? Because the technique I'm going to show you, it's not my technique. I got this from Michael Palmer. I have apprenticed with Michael Palmer up in Vermont. And I love this technique. It is, to me, the only way to get your bees ready for winter. One thing that I use, and here's how I mix my sugar water up. I found if you probably this side of the river, you'll do better than on my side of the river. But I had this thing for 40 years. This is a milk, obviously a stainless steel milk pumper can. It's 5 gallons. What I do, I take hot water off the faucet. I take the electric hot heater, crank it up, undo the little case, turn it up to about 145 degrees. So I got really hot water coming out of the hole, so I don't have to boil water. Put some in the bottom, empty the bag of sugar in there. That's 25 pounds, and that's a 5-gallon container. I put that on a drill, and I mix up my sugar water. And then I pour it in. I've got plastic cardboard water containers where I store it. So when I need to feed the hives, I feed them. I feed them 5 gallons at a time. These type hop feeders, the little small ones, they're not. I'm not a top hive person. I'm feeding. So you kill too many. For me, you kill too many bees. The condensation, and it keeps the hive cool. So, but that's just my opinion. The only time I do use top hive feeders is my technique with the 5 gallons, which I'll show you coming up here. Okay, how we do it. Believe it or not, you can put 5 1-gallon paint cans on the top up here of this hive, believe it or not, and feed it. I buy these paint cans new. You can buy them at Home Depot. If you go to a paint store and you go in, the guy and say, look, I'm a beekeeper. Hey, you give me a good deal, because they get expensive. Hey, and I got a fellow in Fishkill who give them to me at his cost. He says, I'll just give them to your cost. I said, I'll give you some honey. Oh, yeah, great. And I get them for like $1.35. Anyway, that's a 6-penny nail. That's the nail you put in the hive together with. You put a little 5 pattern on that, and here's the technique. Here's 6 bars, and I'll just give you a quick demo of how this goes. So I brought them. So here you go. I use these are old parts of frames, and you put them here, here. Now I had 6 of them. 2 of them somehow flew away. I don't know where they went, but I'll just kind of show you. Now the next thing is, the best thing to do is to put on. Where's my empty super here? I had a dark one. Just so I could. All right. Well, here it is. It's easiest when you put this on top because it's tight, and so you can work against the side of the box. But to show you, I'll put this down here. So here's how you set your cans up. And usually take the handle up. I leave the handles on them because when you start moving them around, you can hold them. Don't take the handles off. It makes it a little more difficult, but this would go up against the box. Well, they're sticking here. How are we doing on time?
Great. You got
I'm coming down the back stretch. Here we go. One in the middle. Okay. All right. And two in the back. All right. Here's what happens. Okay. You're going to start feeding hives, and what do? You put little top feeders in and this and that. You know what that is? That's like putting a cocktail in there for your bees. They just sip away. Hey, here's some easy nectar. You're thirsty? Come on down and have a drink. What you're going to do, this technique, what it does, it overwhelms the hive. You put this on top of it, and all of a sudden they go, doo-doo. Honey flow! Man, right here. We found it. And they just focus on here. They stop foraging. Well, not all of them, but a good strong hive, in 7 days, these are gone. It brings them down into the hive, they put it all together, they ripen it, because you need to ripen this when it's warm out, not in October, you'll never get it. End of September, it's getting cold, especially this side of the river, it's colder than my side of the river. You're not going to get that circulation going to condense down the nectar and make it into sugar water. And it's 50-50. I use that 5-gallon can, 25. So here's 25 pounds of sugar and water, nectar going into this hive. And I do the 3-finger lift. How do I check the weight of the hive? When a hive is full, which is a normal hive, which we'd like to have, would be 2 large your brood chambers, and I have usually 1 to 2 frames on top. If I have a really strong hive, I'm going to have 2 honey supers. And I'm not big into taking all the honey off. Leave a lot of honey in my bees. Anyway, I go on the back, get down to the bottom of the frame with my hand, and I heft it. And if I can't hardly lift this hive up, I know it's ready. It's got more than enough honey. They make scales, they do everything else, but simple way, it's a 2 or 3 finger lift, depending on how strong you are. I just lift up and heft it, and boy, that's pretty good. That's good for these. I'm set for that bees. But what I do, even on my strong hives that have a lot of honey on them, is I'll always 1 or 2 cans, only because they have something to go after, and this has reduced the fighting in my hives to close to 0. Because what happens, if you're going to get into the first week of September, you have a weak hive, and the nectar flow, and I'll tell you, the last 2 years have been the most difficult years of beekeeping that I have experienced in all the years I've been keeping. Way too much rain this past year, and not enough the year before. And in addition to this, and what Tom and I have seen, is also a lack of pollen. And you need that, especially in the fall coming in, to get those older bees that are going to overwinter and get that fat layering going in their bodies. So that's the technique I use, and it will fill the hive up very quickly, and you're done. But if you wait to the 3rd week instead of into October, you're getting too many cold days, and doing this, you can't really evaporate the hive to get that sugar water down. So I start early, and it prevents the robbing that goes on. But so one of the practices is constantly checking your bees. All right, so we'll move on. So that's how it looks. And there's the hefting. I'm probably using 3 fingers right there checking the hive. Now we're gonna get the hive. This is my hives. I'm checking my hives. Oh, I call it the 4-finger lift. And as you can see, these are the hives. This is an apiary I have up at Glenwood. And I use the tar paper on the hives every year. I like it because it's easy to do. It doesn't provide any insulation, and I don't insulate my hives. The biggest bugaboo with beekeepers, and I learned this back in the 60s, is people think like they're a bee. Oh, winter's coming. They got to bundle up and get really tighten. The most important thing is to have good ventilation. People go and they put entrance reducers. I don't put entrance reducers. I make the best mouse guard on the face of the planet. You know those ones that the bar goes this way and has holes drilled through it? That's useless because, and I hope I didn't offend anybody, because what happens when bees die, they're behind that bar and the bees have to lift them up and over because there's a little edge, bottom edge on it. And what happens is it creates condensation. The bees need to be able to clean out the hive. So anybody, well, if you ask most people, what is this? And they go, oh, it's wire. There's a name for it. And if you're over 40, you probably know what the name is. If you're under 40, you may not. Anybody know who wants to tell me what this is called? Hardware cloth, okay? On my side of the river, if you go to Home Depot and ask, where do you keep your hardware cloth? They'll look at you like you have two heads. They don't understand, and they've never heard of this. What, hardware cloth? No, you can get this. I know you can go to hardware stores here and they'll find it. This is 1/2 inch. And this is the best beekeeping and inexpensive. What you do, you cut a piece like this, and it fits in right in the entrance of the hive. And here's what's so great about it. You just take it and bend it like I have here, okay? And you can slide this right in, and the spring of this holds it there. It's never going to move. And bees can come up, they push out all the dead bees, they flow in and out. But my technique is I want good ventilation in my hives because moisture will kill your bees quicker than anything. Oh boy, I got to pay attention. What did I do with that?
Galvanized?
No, I'm looking for the. Oh. No. Oh, that's it. Sorry about it. All right. Oh, all right. So let me. All right. Here we go. Let me just. All right. So we take the cans off. There's the hive, and here we go. I checked. This is the hive checking for. I think I might. Here's the guard right here, and as you can see right here in the front of the hive.
Is this October?
This is this is after I have them. Yeah, this is end of October. I usually start first week in October, close enough. Depends how the weather is. Again, Tom was talking about you got to watch the weather. I see it coming. It's getting cold. I'll get them done. It helps you have 2 people to do it. The piece of and I buy the cheapest, thinnest tar paper. Thank you. You can because it works and bends easy. And you do it on a sunny day, lay it in the sun, it gets nice and warm, and have somebody to help you and pull it around. You staple with a staple gun. The only thing is, take it easy on the staples. It's easy because you got to take them out in the springtime. So just and then what I do, I take the inner cover, tape both sides with duct tape, and I flip it upside down, which most of us all know about that. And then on the top this is a 2-inch of rigid foam. Why do I do that? Okay, so here's the hive, and it's up like this, and well, let me just quick take these paint cans off, because now we're done feeding the bees. We take the hive, their cover, flipped it over, put this on top. All right, and then we're going to do the wax paper around. And as you can see, it goes around here, and it folds like a package on top. And then you bring it up and you fold it, as you can see in these pictures right here. And you put this inner cover on your outer cover over the top of it. And I'm telling you, this goes. It seals beautifully. It has never blown off, and I don't even put. If I have rocks laying there, I'll put them on top. But it fits nice and tight. So, what happens is, you have the wire screen in the bottom. Okay, good ventilation, and you have your inner cover up here. This causes a chimney effect. The air comes in here, and it doesn't go up into the hive. It comes up and goes right up the face of the hive. And in the wintertime, all I do is I slide in the screen bottom board. I just slide in my plastic sticky board just to block the air, and in the back there's a spacing. I take a piece of duct tape and wrap around it just to so you don't get gushes of air or snow blowing up inside of the hive. And that's the only thing I do to close it for the winter. And most importantly, that after you put it on, here's the wire going in. You squeeze it, you put it in, no mice can get in, and the bees can keep it nice and clean throughout the winter. The next thing is I staple this down right around the entrance. Now it takes a little tricky to find it. You get the center, you come down, and I poke with a knife till it goes through. I cut out the hole and staple it. If you forget that, your hive will be dead in the springtime. I know. I've killed 2 hives in a rush, getting so many things done, and I missed and put on new paper on a new hive and forgot to put the holes in. So do not do that. Guaranteed you'll have dead hives. Saddest thing was I caught a third area swarm from a hive, had a cluster of bees that big. And for the fun of it, I nursed them back, the challenges of beekeeping, the fun thing, I nursed them back to a really strong little nuke going into the winter. And that's one of them I forgot to open the hive on, which really was sad. So, listen, so thank you for listening. That's my dog that used to pal around with me, the bee dog. She loved the bees. She loved the smell of them. And that's my apiary up at Glenwood. Well, I have a fence around here. The animals one time, they put goats in this thing, and my hives, they came up there and climbed on them and knocked them over, so I put a fence around them. And that's where I keep all my things, which is really nice. I think that wraps it up. If there's any questions later on, I'll be glad to talk to you about what I do. But that's my technique for overwintering and getting the sugar water into them fast and making them strong and healthy. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.